There are moments in life you don't forget. The first time you ride a bike, your first heartbreak, and apparently, the moment you realize your own mother never saw you as her son, just as a walking, talking ATM. My name's Connor. I'm 31, single, and living in a city 3 hours away from where I grew up. I work as a mid-level software engineer at a mid-sized company. Nothing flashy. No Lumbos, no private jets, no million-dollar startup. But I make decent money, enough to live comfortably, save a little, and help out when people need it. I always thought that's what family did for each other. You help out when you can. You show up when it matters. You support one another. Turns out, I was the only one in my family who actually believed that. I grew up in a small town, one of those places where everybody knows everybody and nobody lets you forget your past. My parents, Diane and Rick, divorced when I was 11. Dad left, moved to Arizona, and more or less disappeared. Mom raised me and my younger sister, Brianna. We never had much growing up. Mom worked 2 jobs most of my childhood. She was tired, stressed, and often emotionally unavailable, but I never blamed her for it. I thought she was doing the best she could. I took on a lot of responsibility early, watching Brianna after school, cooking dinner, keeping things together. When I got my first job at 17, I used most of my paycheck to help with groceries or Brianna's school supplies. I told myself that's just what the older sibling does. Fast forward to college. I got a partial scholarship and worked part-time to make up the rest. Mom didn't have the savings to help, which I understood. Brianna, on the other hand, dropped out of community college after 1 semester, decided college wasn't for her, and bounced around a few jobs before landing in retail. She's 28 now, still living at home, and has this permanent sense of injustice, like the world owes her for daring to exist. She'll say things like, "I could have had a career like Connor if I'd had the same opportunities. Never mind that I built everything from scratch while juggling classes, late-night shifts, and microwaved mac and cheese." About 5 years ago, when I started making decent money, I made what I now realize was my first big mistake. I offered to help Mom out with bills. It started small. A couple hundred for utilities here, a car repair there. Then came the medical bills, the broken washer, the unexpected expenses that always seemed to appear right before rent was due. I didn't mind at first. I was grateful for what she'd done raising us, and I felt like I was finally in a position to give back. It wasn't like I had a family of my own to support, and what's a few $100 here and there? But the thing about generosity is, when people start to expect it, it stops feeling like kindness and starts feeling like obligation. What used to be a "thank you so much" turned into a "we really need this by Friday." Then came the guilt trips. You don't know how hard it is being on a fixed income. Brianna can't catch a break. I just need a little help this month. Only, this month was every month. And Brianna? She wasn't even trying. She'd flake out of shifts, complain about her manager, then text me asking for $200 to cover her phone bill like it was nothing. I started to feel like a backup plan they never intended to stop using. Still, I didn't say anything. I told myself I was keeping the peace. That family comes with baggage. That it was easier to send the money than to argue. But slowly, I started pulling back. Not dramatically, just little things. I stopped offering. If they asked, I'd help if I could, but I stopped checking in weekly or sending surprise transfers when they were short. And I noticed the tone in Mom's voice shift. There was a coldness there. Not outright hostile, but clipped. She started calling less. Brianna barely texted unless she needed something. I chalked it up to distance. I figured, maybe they just didn't know how to ask for help anymore without feeling embarrassed. Then came the day everything shifted. A few weeks ago, I was driving home from work, Bluetooth connected, music playing low. Mom had called earlier, and I must have forgotten to hang up. I'm not even sure how long the call had been running before I noticed. Maybe 5, 10 minutes? I only realized it when the music paused, and I heard muffled voices. I turned the volume up, confused. That's when I heard them. Mom, Brianna, and someone else, I think one of Brianna's friends. Laughing, talking. My name came up. Brianna said, "I swear, Connor acts like he's doing us a favor. Like, bro, you make 6 figures, and you're sending us crumbs." Then Mom chimed in. "He's just trying to feel superior. Always has. Even when he was a kid, he wanted a gold star for doing the dishes. He thinks he's better than us just 'cause he moved to the city." The other voice, some girl I didn't recognize, snorted. "At least he's useful. Human cash machine." To which my mother replied, and I will never forget this line as long as I live. Yeah, well, pathetic or not, he pays the bills. That's what matters. I sat in my car, engine running, completely still. Like if I didn't move, the words wouldn't be real. I ended the call, my hands shaking, and just stared at the dashboard. Pathetic. Human cash machine. That's what I was to them. Not a son, not a brother, just a resource to exploit. And the worst part? I wasn't even surprised. Not really. Deep down, I think I'd always known. But hearing their voices so casual, so smug, it broke something in me. I didn't confront them. Not right away. For a few days, I just went numb. I replayed that call over and over in my head, trying to make sense of it, trying to give them the benefit of the doubt. Maybe it was a joke. Maybe they were venting. But it wasn't a joke. It was how they really saw me. The more I sat with it, the more I realized this wasn't some one-off comment. This was the truth peeking through the cracks. They didn't love me. They loved what I could give them. A week later, I got a text from Brianna. Can you send $300? My car battery died, and I can't get to work. No, hi. No, how are you? Just the usual request, like nothing had changed. I stared at the message for a long time. And that was the moment I finally snapped. I didn't reply to Brianna's text. I just stared at it. Can you send $300? My car battery died, and I can't get to work. No, please. No, I'm sorry to ask again. Just the assumption that I would, because I always had. Like clockwork. Like I was hardwired to fix things the moment they broke. Bills, emotions, relationships, her life. I set my phone down and walked to the window of my apartment. It was raining lightly, just enough to blur the city lights and turn them into watercolor streaks. People walked beneath umbrellas, cars hissed down the wet streets, and everything felt distant. I pressed my forehead to the glass and tried to feel something. Anger, sadness, anything. But I was just drained. I didn't want to cry. I didn't want to scream. I just wanted to be free. I left the text unanswered. The next day, she called. I let it ring. Then Mom called. I sent it to voicemail. 3 hours later, another message popped up, this time from Mom. Hey, sweetie, just wondering if you got Brianna's message. She's really stressed. If you could help her out, that would mean a lot. I stared at the word sweetie for a full minute. The same woman who called me a pathetic cash machine less than 2 weeks ago was now layering on the fake warmth like it would cover the rot beneath. That's when it hit me. This wasn't love. This was customer service. I was only treated well when I was paying. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel guilty saying no. But I didn't send a dramatic message or cut them off. Not yet. I wanted to see what would happen if I just stopped. That week, silence. The next, passive aggression. Mom posted some cryptic Facebook status about how ungrateful some children become once they make it and forget where they came from. Brianna commented with a broken heart emoji and a facts underneath. A few of her friends chimed in, too. SMH hate when that happens. Sad to see real ones change. All vague, but pointed. I didn't respond. I didn't even like the post. Then the group chat lit up. We had this family group chat, started back when I was helping them coordinate Christmas gifts one year. I hadn't said much in it for a while, but suddenly I was tagged. Mom, at Connor, not sure if you saw Bree's message, but she really needs that money. Can you help? Brianna, it's actually super urgent. Can't believe you're ghosting right now. You literally make bank. This is nothing to you. Then came the cherry on top. Mom again. After everything we've done for you. I almost laughed out loud. Everything they'd done for me? You mean raising me? That thing you're legally obligated to do? Or was it the years I spent sacrificing my social life, my weekends, my teenage years, so that Brianna could have stability? The groceries I paid for? The rent I covered that one year when Mom accidentally overdrew her account 3 months in a row? Or the time I paid off Brianna's credit card so she could reset her life, only for her to buy a new iPad 2 weeks later? No. This time, I wasn't letting it go. I typed out a message, then deleted it, then typed another, and deleted that, too. Nothing felt right. I didn't want to fight. I didn't want to argue. I just wanted to be done. So I did nothing. A few days passed, then a full week. I went to work, worked out, saw friends, and didn't once open the group chat. And for the first time in a long while, I felt something close to peace. Until the call came from Aunt Marie. Aunt Marie is my mom's older sister, practical, dry-humored, lives in upstate New York. She and I talk maybe 3 times a year, usually on holidays or birthdays. So when I saw her name flash on my phone during a Tuesday lunch break, I knew something was off. "Hey, Connor," she started, voice soft but strained. "Do you have a minute?" "Yeah, of course. What's up?" She exhaled into the phone. "I just got off the phone with your mother. Well, she's pretty upset. Says you're refusing to help Brianna during a really critical time." I clenched my jaw. "Is that what she told you?" "She said Brianna's car died and that you've been ignoring them. That she's been struggling and you're suddenly acting cold. That something must have changed." I leaned back in my chair, staring at the ceiling. "Marie, do you know how many times I've covered for Brianna's critical times?" She was quiet for a beat. "She didn't mention that. Just that you've been distant." I figured something happened. I told her everything. Not in a rage. Not dramatically. Just plainly, like I was reporting facts. The money. The manipulation. The phone call I accidentally overheard. Every comment. Every laugh. Every time they made me feel like a piggy bank with a heartbeat. When I finished, Marie was silent. "I'm sorry," she said finally. "I didn't know. That's awful." I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. "I'm tired, Marie. I've been trying to be a good son, a good brother. But it's never enough." She hesitated. "Well, I think you need to know something. And I don't say this to hurt you. But this isn't new." I sat up straighter. "What do you mean?" "I mean this dynamic. The way Diane treats you. It started a long time ago. She's always leaned on you more than she should have. Even when you were a teenager. I remember telling her once, 'You shouldn't put all that weight on Connor. He's just a kid.' And she said, 'Connor's the responsible one. He can handle it.' She's always seen you as the one who would fix things." My throat tightened. "I thought she just needed help," I whispered. "I thought I was being a good son." "You were," she said. "But being a good son doesn't mean letting yourself be used." After that call, I sat in silence for a long time. I felt like my entire life had been rewritten in real time. Like I'd just been handed a new lens to look through, and suddenly all the things that never quite made sense were sharp and undeniable. That weekend, I didn't answer any calls. Instead, I drove back to my hometown. Not to visit. To see things clearly. I parked across the street from the house I grew up in. It looked smaller than I remembered. The porch paint was chipped, the yard overgrown. Brianna's old Honda sat crooked in the driveway. I watched as the front door opened and Mom stepped out, cigarette in one hand, phone in the other. She didn't notice me. I watched her pace and talk and laugh like she didn't have a care in the world. Probably telling someone about her lazy son, who wouldn't cough up $300. I didn't get out of the car. I just watched. I left after 10 minutes. On the way back, I stopped at a diner on the edge of town. The same one I used to work at in college. As I drank my coffee, I scrolled through old texts, old bank transfers. Years of proof that I'd been the emergency plan, the fallback, the fixer. And the more I saw, the more I realized I hadn't just been used. I had been conditioned. Conditioned to believe that love had to be earned through service. That my value was tied to my usefulness. That saying no made me selfish. And then I saw it. A new text from Brianna. This one didn't even ask. It demanded. "I told Mom you'd send it by Friday. Don't make her stress about this." That was it. No please. No thanks. No context. Just entitlement. I felt something hot rise in my chest. Not rage. Not grief. Resolve. I typed something out. Paused. Deleted it. And then I decided. This wasn't going to be a simple no. This was going to be the end of it. But not on their terms. Not with a fight. Not with screaming. I was going to show them exactly who I was. And who I wasn't. And they'd never see it coming. After I read Brianna's text, that cold, entitled message, something shifted inside me. Like a cord had finally snapped. Not violently. Not all at once. But like a tired, fraying rope that had been pulled too tight for too long. I didn't reply. I didn't even screenshot it. I just stared at the words until they blurred, then locked my phone and set it face down on the kitchen table. It was a Saturday. Overcast. I remember the light barely coming through the window, everything feeling gray. I hadn't eaten. I hadn't slept well in days. I kept cycling through everything I'd overheard on that call. Pathetic, cash machine. He thinks he's better than us. Like a broken record. And now Brianna just expected me to pay up? Like this was a subscription and she was the customer demanding service? The silence in my apartment felt different that day. Heavier. For years, I tried to keep it warm. Plants on the windowsill, photos of the three of us framed on the sideboard. A home is where you make it sign near the front door that I picked up from some tourist shop in Asheville. But now it all looked fake. Set dressing. Props for a life I thought I had, but didn't. I felt hollow, used, and deeply, deeply alone. For the first time in years, I asked myself something I'd been too scared to ask. What if they never loved me? Not the way I love them. Not with the kind of love that's unconditional, unselfish, real. What if all this time I'd been chasing a version of family that only existed in my head? That day, I didn't answer a single call or text. I didn't post online. I didn't speak to anyone. I just lay on the couch with an old throw blanket and watched a documentary about some guy who built a cabin in the woods to escape the modern world. And I envied him. Not for the solitude, but for the clarity, the certainty. He knew who he was. He wasn't performing. He wasn't appeasing. He was just being. The next morning, I called in sick. Not because I was physically ill, but because I couldn't bring myself to pretend I was okay. My boss, thankfully, was understanding. I'd built a solid reputation at work, the dependable guy, the one who stayed late, fixed bugs without being asked, trained the new hires. If only my family had appreciated me the way my colleagues did. The next few weeks blurred. I went to work, came home, avoided calls. I deleted the family group chat, removed Brianna from Venmo, unfollowed Mom on Facebook. It was quiet, eerily so, but underneath the silence, something was stirring. Not anger, not yet, but a kind of defiance. A refusal to go back. But rock bottom has a funny way of digging deeper. It was the third week of this self-imposed exile when I got a call from my landlord. He sounded uncomfortable. "Hey Connor, sorry to bother you. Just wanted to check something. Did you happen to authorize a maintenance request for someone named Diane?" My stomach dropped. My mom, that's what she said. Claimed she was staying with you and needed a duplicate key. Said you asked her to come water your plants while you were on vacation. I almost dropped the phone. "I'm not on vacation," I said slowly. "That's what I figured," he replied. "Just wanted to double check." She showed up in person. Seemed very confident. I hung up, shaking. My mind raced. Had she seriously tried to break into my apartment? I checked my emails. My messages. I hadn't given her any reason to believe I was away. I hadn't posted a thing. And then I remembered. Years ago, I had once joked that if anything happened to me, she'd know where the spare key was. Buried in a magnet box behind the recycling bin in the basement garage. I ran down 6 flights of stairs. The box was gone. I was furious. But more than that, I was scared. She had tried to let herself into my life, literally. Uninvited. Unannounced. Like my boundaries meant nothing. Like I was her property. Her investment. I changed the locks that night. And that was when I hit the real bottom. Not when I overheard the phone call. Not when I was guilt-tripped over money. Not even when I cut contact. No, it was when I realized that I didn't know who I was without them. I had shaped so much of my identity around being the good son, the helpful older brother, the fixer. Without that role, what was left? I was just Connor, 31, alone in a silent apartment with new locks and dead plants. I didn't cry. I started journaling. Nothing dramatic. Just 1 page every night. A brain dump. Whatever I was thinking, however ugly or small. And slowly, I began to understand something. I hadn't just been giving them money. I'd been giving them power. Over how I saw myself. Over my worth. And I was done with that. Rebuilding didn't happen all at once. It never does. But I began with small things. I took down the photos on the sideboard. Replaced them with pictures from trips I'd taken alone. Hiking in Zion. A blurry photo of me grinning on a rooftop in Lisbon. A candid shot a stranger took of me reading in a hammock in Tulum. I threw out the home is where you make it sign. That home was gone. It never existed. I signed up for a boxing class. Not because I wanted to fight, but because I needed to feel something in my body besides tension and dread. The first few sessions were brutal. I was slow, clumsy, surfer days. But each punch I threw felt like a tiny release. At work, I started speaking up more. Not just on projects, but about boundaries. I told my manager I wasn't available after 7 p.m. anymore. I stopped picking up the slack when others fell short. I didn't need to prove myself. I was already enough. I reconnected with friends I'd lost touch with, people I'd neglected while trying to keep my family afloat. We got dinner, saw movies, played board games on Sunday nights. They didn't want anything from me. They just wanted me. And slowly, very slowly, I started to feel whole. One of the biggest turning points came about 6 weeks later. I got a message on LinkedIn from a recruiter at a tech company I'd admired for years. They had an opening on a product team. They'd seen some of the open source work I'd contributed to and were impressed. We set up a call. One thing led to another, and I found myself interviewing for a senior engineer position that would not only pay more, but come with remote flexibility and leadership potential. During the final interview, the hiring manager asked, "What motivates you?" And I surprised myself with the answer. "I used to think it was being needed," I said. "But now, I think it's building things that last. Whether it's a product, a relationship, or just a version of myself I can be proud of." I got the job. The offer letter came 2 days later. I accepted without hesitation. But I didn't tell anyone. Not Mom. Not Brianna. Not even Aunt Marie. This victory was mine. And it came without strings. As the weeks turned into months, something strange happened. I stopped missing them. Not the people they pretended to be. Not the version of family I had carried in my heart for so long. But the real them. The ones who saw me as leverage. As a tool. As a means to an end. I didn't need their approval. I didn't need their praise. I didn't even need their apology. But closure? That was a different story. And fate, it seemed, wasn't done yet. Because just when I thought they had moved on, that they'd found some other source of income, or finally learned how to manage their own lives, I got a message that sent a chill down my spine. It was an email. Subject line, "Need to talk." Sender, Diane Mitchell. My mother. There was no greeting. No hi. Or how are you? Just one line. "Your sister told me what you've been up to. We need to have a serious conversation." I stared at it for a long time. Because that was the moment I knew. They weren't just after money anymore. Something else was happening. Something bigger. And whatever it was coming for me next. When I saw the subject line of that email, "Need to talk," my chest tightened like a vice. It had been 3 months since I'd cut contact. 3 months of silence. 3 months of healing, of clarity, of finally learning how to breathe without the weight of obligation pressing on my ribs. And now she was back. Or at least, trying to be. The email was short. Just that one sentence. "Your sister told me what you've been up to. We need to have a serious conversation." No details. No tone. No clue what she meant by "what you've been up to." My stomach churned. I hadn't told anyone about the new job, the pay bump, the remote flexibility, or the equity package. I'd kept that locked tight, partly out of spite, but mostly out of self-protection. I didn't want them using my success as leverage. I wanted it to be mine. So how did she know? There were only a few possibilities. Maybe she found something online, LinkedIn, a blog post, a company press release. Or maybe, I opened my texts. Sure enough, there it was. A single message from an unknown number. "New job, huh? Not surprised. You always were the golden boy. Must be nice having money to burn." No name. No context. But I knew the tone. Brianna. The timing lined up perfectly. I hadn't blocked her number, just deleted the thread. I guess she found another phone. Maybe a friend's. Maybe a burner. I didn't care. What mattered was that she knew. And she'd told Mom. I should have seen it coming. To them, money wasn't a resource. It was a lifeline. And I'd cut them off cold turkey. So now, they were circling back, not with apologies or accountability, but with curiosity. With plans. But they had made one fatal mistake. They thought I was still the same person. They thought I could still be guilt, manipulated, used. They didn't realize I had changed. I leaned back in my chair, stared at the email, and felt a cold resolve settle in my chest. They wanted something. And this time, I wasn't just going to say no. I was going to watch them ask. And then take everything away. But to do that, I needed more than silence. I needed a strategy. First, I called Aunt Marie. She picked up after 2 rings. "Connor." "Hey," I said. "Got a minute?" "Of course." "Everything okay?" I told her about the email. The vague tone. The mystery. The suspicion. She sighed. "I was afraid something like this would happen." "You've talked to them?" "Not directly. But I've heard things. From cousins. Neighbors. Apparently, your mom's been telling people you're doing really well, and that she's just waiting for the right time to rebuild the family bond." I snorted. That's one way to put it. She's been buttering people up. Playing the forgiving mother role. Trying to set a stage. For what? "I don't know," she said carefully. "But I think she wants something big. Something that requires goodwill." That made my stomach twist again. What could they possibly want now? There was a long pause on the line. Then Aunt Marie said, "Your grandfather left behind some property. Land mostly. Nothing huge. But he left it in a trust for his grandchildren. Plural. Brianna never knew about it because it wasn't supposed to be distributed until both of you turned 30. I always thought it would be split between you. I blinked. I never heard about that. Because your mom didn't want you to. And how do you know? I'm the secondary trustee. That stopped me cold. Wait. So it's real? Yes. The land isn't worth millions, but it's prime location now. Developers are sniffing around. A few months ago, I got a call from a real estate agent saying Diane had approached them, claiming she had the authority to sell it. But she doesn't. No. You and Brianna do. Together. And there it was. The plan. They weren't just trying to cozy back up to me. They were trying to prep me for something. A deal. A favor. A family opportunity. I felt sick. So what happens if I refuse? Marie exhaled. Then nothing gets sold. The trust requires both signatures. That's why they need you. But they don't want to earn your cooperation. They want to force it. I nodded slowly, even though she couldn't see. Thank you for telling me. Connor, she said gently, I know this is a lot, but you need to be careful. They're not going to come at you directly. They'll try to trap you with emotion. They'll say it's what your grandfather wanted, that it's Brianna's only shot at independence, that you're the obstacle. They already think that, I muttered. They always have. But now, she said, you hold all the cards. And that's when the plan began. I didn't reply to the email right away. I waited a full week. Let it stew. Let them wonder. Then I sent back a single line. Sure. I'm available next Sunday. Let me know the time. The response came within an hour. 3 p.m. Same house I grew up in. I knew what they were expecting. A reunion. A guilt-ridden prodigal son, finally crawling back to the fold. I was supposed to sit on the couch, look ashamed, and listen to their pitches, their tears, their "we just want what's best for everyone" monologue. They didn't know I was coming prepared. I spent the next few days gathering everything. Bank statements, screenshots of years of transactions, utility payments, Venmo transfers, grocery runs, credit card bailouts. Even that time I paid off Mom's overdue tax bill in 2020, and she told me it was just a temporary setback. I printed them all, organized them by year, put them in a slim black folder, and tucked it under my arm the day I drove to their house. I didn't dress up, just jeans and a plain gray hoodie. I didn't want to look like the successful son. I wanted to look forgettable, someone they'd underestimate, someone they thought they still had power over. When I knocked, Mom answered. She looked exactly the same, maybe more tired, maybe with a bit more makeup than usual, but still wearing that practice smile, the one she pulled out when she wanted something. Her eyes flicked to the folder, but she said nothing. Connor, she said warmly. Come in. I stepped inside. The house smelled the same, some mix of potpourri and microwave leftovers. The living room was cluttered. Brianna sat on the recliner, legs folded, scrolling her phone like she wasn't expecting this to matter. Hey, she said flatly. Hey, I replied. We sat. For a few minutes, no one spoke. Then Mom launched into it. I'm so glad you came. I know things have been difficult, but families go through rough patches. That doesn't mean we stop being there for each other. I said nothing. She continued. We've all said things we regret. I know I have, but I believe this family can still move forward. Stronger. I almost laughed. Then she leaned forward, her expression shifting into earnest concern. We've been presented with a unique opportunity. You remember Grandpa Mitchell's land? I nodded slowly. Well, she said, smiling. It turns out it's quite valuable now. We've spoken to a few people, developers, mostly, and there's serious interest. But of course, the trust requires signatures. Yours and Brianna's. I turned to my sister. She was chewing gum, looking bored. It could mean a fresh start, Mom added. For all of us. A chance to get back on our feet. You mean your feet? I said quietly. Mom blinked. Excuse me. I set the folder on the table. Before we talk about moving forward, I think we need to talk about the past. Brianna rolled her eyes. Oh God, here we go. I opened the folder. Page 1. A summary of financial contributions. Year by year. I didn't speak for a while. Just let them flip through it. Mom's face shifted first. Confusion, then defensiveness, then something unreadable. This is, she began. Connor, this isn't fair. No, I said. What wasn't fair was being called a pathetic cash machine after covering your bills for nearly a decade. Mom's mouth opened, but no words came. You think I didn't hear the call? I continued. You think I don't know what you say behind my back? You thought I'd never stop playing the role you cast me in, the fixer. The provider. The obedient son. Brianna scoffed. It's not that deep. We were venting. I turned to her. You're 28, Bri. I was already managing 2 part-time jobs at your age. You can't keep using your childhood as an excuse for being a leech. Her face turned red. Mom raised a hand, trying to stay calm. Connor, we're not asking for charity. We're offering a joint opportunity. A sale that benefits you, too. I leaned back, studying them. Then I smiled. Because I knew something they didn't. They needed the sale. Badly. They had already started making promises. They'd told people it was happening. They'd counted their money before the ink was dry. If I walked now, the whole deal would implode. And I wasn't done yet. This wasn't just about saying no. It was about showing them what it feels like to need and be denied. The air in the room turned brittle after I smiled. That was the moment the balance of power shifted, when they realized I wasn't here to make peace or sign papers. I was here to end things. Mom sat up straighter, her eyes scanning me for signs of softness, some crack she could slip into like she always had. Brianna, meanwhile, folded her arms and narrowed her eyes. So, Mom said carefully, you're refusing to sign? I didn't answer right away. I closed the folder in front of me and gently placed it back in my lap. Then I looked up. No, I said, I'm not refusing. I'm just not ready. Brianna's jaw tightened. What the hell does that mean? It means, I said evenly, that I have a few conditions before I even consider moving forward. You came to me, remember? Not the other way around. And after everything, I think I deserve to set some terms. Mom let out a shaky breath. Connor, honey, this isn't about. Don't call me that, I said. Calm. Measured. You lost the right. Her lips pressed into a thin line. Brianna rolled her eyes. This is so dramatic. Just say what you want already. I turned toward her, and for the first time in my life, I didn't see my little sister. I saw a grown woman who had made 1,000 choices, all of them selfish. I saw someone who had never once helped me, protected me, stood up for me. Someone who'd gotten used to taking and assumed it would never end. You'll both get a copy of a document tomorrow, I said. It's a legal agreement, drawn up by a lawyer I trust. It outlines what percentage of the sale goes to whom, and under what conditions. Mom blinked. But the land is supposed to be split. Equally? Yeah, that's what Grandpa intended. But the trust leaves room for modification with mutual consent. And if I'm going to give mine, then things are going to change. I pulled out a single piece of paper from my folder and slid it across the table. This is a summary. Brianna snatched it and began reading. Her mouth dropped open as her eyes scanned down the page. You've got to be kidding me. The agreement proposed a split. 70% to me, 30% to Brianna. Non-negotiable, I said. Mom's voice turned sharp. That's ridiculous. Brianna is entitled to her half. She's entitled to nothing unless I agree to sign. That's how the trust works. And frankly, after everything she said about me, 30% is generous. Brianna slapped the paper down. You think this makes you look strong? You look petty. I smiled again. No, petty would be what I almost did, which was let the land rot out of spite and leave you with nothing. But then I remembered, I'm not you. Mom leaned forward, her voice soft and desperate now. Connor, please. You don't understand what this could mean for your sister. She's been struggling. She's always been struggling, I said, because she refuses to grow up. And you've enabled her every step of the way. Brianna stood up, fists clenched. You think you're better than us, huh? No, I said, rising too. I know I am. And it's not because I have money. It's because I've taken responsibility for my life. Something neither of you has ever done. I looked down at Mom. There's more. She flinched. You're going to sign a statement, notarized, acknowledging that I've financially supported this family for over 10 years. That the gifts, payments, and favors I've given are not debts or loans, but voluntary support that I am now formally ending. Mom's face paled. Why? Because I'm done. I'm not going to wake up in 5 years and find out Brianna tried to sue me for back pay. I'm not going to let either of you spin some story to relatives about how I abandoned you. I want it in writing. A clean break. Brianna scoffed. Good luck getting us to sign anything. Then good luck ever selling that land, I said, picking up the folder. And by the way, I've already talked to a few developers myself. Turns out, I can sit on this for another 5 years and the value will just go up. You need this now. I don't. I turned to leave. Connor, wait, Mom said. I paused at the door, but didn't turn around. What happened to you? she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I turned just enough to meet her eyes. You did. And then I walked out. 3 days later, the signed agreement came back. I was stunned, but I shouldn't have been. They needed the money, more than they needed their pride. I took it to the lawyer, who filed the necessary paperwork. Within 6 weeks, the deal closed. The buyers wired the money to the escrow account. I got my share. Brianna got hers, too. But she didn't get it free and clear. I insisted on a clause that placed her portion in a managed trust. She would get monthly payouts, not a lump sum. It protected her from blowing it all and crawling back to me 6 months later. It wasn't kindness. It was insurance. Mom, meanwhile, got nothing. The property was never in her name. She had no legal claim, no stake, no access. But she did get one thing: silence. I never spoke to either of them again. Months passed. The money sat in my account, untouched. I didn't buy a new car. Didn't move to a high-rise condo. Didn't post about it online. I just kept working, traveling, boxing, living. One night, I got drinks with a colleague from the new job, a quiet guy named Elias who once told me he was estranged from his parents, too. After a few rounds, I told him the whole story. He whistled when I finished. Man, he said, shaking his head, you didn't just cut the cord. You burned the whole tree down. I laughed. Not bitterly, really laughed, from the gut. And then I said, yeah, and it's the best decision I ever made. Because it was. Revenge isn't always about destruction. Sometimes it's about clarity, about standing up, not to hurt, but to end the hurt. To build a wall between yourself and the people who never deserved access to your heart in the first place. I didn't need them to apologize. I didn't need them to change. I just needed them gone. And they were. Forever.